I think of conversation a lot like almost like a muscle. Like you have to build it, right?
Okay,
and
sure.
it takes intentionality. And if you're looking in the mirror right now and you're saying, man, we only really talk about the day-to-day things. Like my wife and I don't really ever talk about anything interesting. I think understanding that it's going to take some practice. This is Ryan and Michelle, and welcome to the Celebrate MarriageCast, where we hope to restore and reclaim godly marriages through honest and real conversations.
Welcome to episode 69. We are so glad to have you with us, and fun weekend for us in the O'Connor household.
Yeah.
Celebrated Ella's 19th birthday, which is
birthday.
crazy.
Yeah, holy cow.
She's back still for Christmas break, so that was super fun for us. And here we are talking about how to be the most interesting person in the room.
In the world.
In the world.
That's right.
I stand corrected.
That's right. Yeah.
There's a commercial about this.
Yeah, Michelle, do you remember those commercials that had like that guy?
Yeah.
And he was like that like mysterious guy, and he was
the
like
beverage company.
He was like, I used to fly airplanes over Alaska with my pet bear who was a co-pilot. And then I was drinking coffee blindfolded over whatever.
Kilimanjaro.
Yeah,
as
it
I
was like,
hiked it backwards. I'm the most interesting man in the world.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, those were great commercials.
Yeah, they were really fun. There's a whole marketing campaign around that. And I think that is very intriguing too. I would like to be the most interesting woman in the world.
Right.
Or person or spouse.
Yeah, I mean, I think it brings up a fun point. And part of this is, we're into 2025, and it really just brings up this topic of conversation. And are you having interesting conversations with your spouse?
Yeah, valid. I feel like conversation is a skill and an art. Yeah. And it also requires intentionality.
Right.
Because it's really easy to just check out and kind of go into autopilot.
Yeah.
It requires an intentional engagement.
Yeah. I've often thought of this, like if somebody was like eavesdropping on like our conversation, we like, if we're out to dinner and somebody's just like listening in, would they be like, wow, those people are really interesting? Or would they be like, man, they are so boring. Like they just talk about like, how was your day? Good.
Oh, it's fine. How's the weather? Oh, it's
cold.
Fine. It's cold. looking at our phones, not even talking. Maybe it's just silence.
Right.
You know what's crazy, Ryan? I had coffee with my friend Sarah this morning, and the guy like 2 tables down from us for a while who's not wearing earbuds or AirPods. And I literally had that thought. I was like, I feel like he's kind of listening, and like, I wonder if this is interesting. And I was kind of telling her, hey, this week we're going to record, or next week we're recording 3 podcasts. And then I was saying, that weekend we're going to be doing a sermon in Yankton, South Dakota. That's super cool. You guys, that's a full circle moment for our prayer list, by the way, because I put on last year's prayer list that I wanted us to be able to go speak somewhere for free. And you know what? Yankton, South Dakota.
Yeah, let's go.
Is putting us up for the night.
Yeah.
All expenses paid. Some expenses paid.
Right.
Anyways, I was talking about that, and I was like, the next week I'm going to be speaking at the University of South Dakota and da-da-da. And I was like, I wonder if this is interesting. But I feel like we have interesting things to talk about, you and I. Right. When we go out.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a question to ask. Like, are your conversations interesting?
Sure.
Or are they very surface level, very transactional? And what I mean by that is like, hey, did you pay these bills? Hey, we got to pick up the kids at blah, blah, blah. Like just everything is like day-to-day activities.
We talked about that last week with, strike that reverse, going back to what you did in the beginning. Have you fallen into some of those transactional conversations? No, some of them are necessary.
Yeah.
You have to figure out who's going to pay the bills, who's going to set the trash out, who's going to go pick up the kids from practice. But if that's all you're talking about, then you got to do something to kind of reset that.
Yeah.
Fan the flames,
right.
become a little more interesting.
And that's what we're going to do today. We're going to give you tips to become the most interesting people in the world.
I like it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I am very excited for this show, Ryan.
Yeah, absolutely. So your first tip here, this is a shocker, but here you go. Your first tip, do something to expand your brains. Now, what do I mean by that? Like read a book together, take a class, do an activity. So for us, we've been doing a Bible study this year. We started it January 1st. It's called Bible Recap. Essentially, it's a year-long read through the Bible.
With Tara Lee Cobble.
Yeah.
I don't know if that matters, but I think there are many Bible recaps out there.
Oh, are there? Okay.
I think so. She always says that. You have to make sure it's the one that says Tara Lee Cobble.
Okay.
It's been amazing.
Yeah, it's been amazing. And what it does is that actually it's sparked conversation. And it sparked something interesting. Like it's something to talk about. And I feel like it's brought up a lot of great conversation for us of like, hey, what do you think of this today?
Right.
This is crazy.
Right. Even, well, for example, you guys, just to give you a little hook, on day one or two, day one, I think it was, she answered the question, the hypothesis for why or how Cain and Abel got their wives. I've always wondered that. And she did this whole analysis on it.
Yeah.
And that was so fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we talked about it together.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my gosh, Ryan, what do you think about that?
Right.
And we had this great dialogue.
Right. Yeah. It's instantly like it just creates this, it puts different thoughts out there and different things. Like when you expand your brain or use your brain or, even take like the MarriageCast today, like if you were to listen to that with your spouse, it creates conversation. And it's like, hey, did you hear the crazy thing that Ryan said? Right?
Right. Or, hey, that show made me think about this, or I think that we should start working on XYZ. Right. What do you think?
Right. Yeah. So, I think that's the first topic or the first idea here is to do something together.
Yeah.
Do something together to expand your brains, to get your brain firing.
Hey, one thing that we're offering right now as a church family is our 21 days of prayer. And again, that would be another great way to connect with your spouse because that actually happened. The other day, it was like, what do you want your word to be for your family? And you texted me and you said, I want our words to be, this and this. You said, peace and heal. I think were those your two?
Yeah.
And I said, peace and open, like welcoming.
Yeah.
And so we had a dialogue about that. But Celebrate..church, Celebrate.church is our website. And on our app, Celebrate Community Church app, you can find this 21 days of prayer devotionals. We're going through prayer and fasting, and there are videos each day for that. And that's been really great content.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, great ideas. Ryan, you also suggested reading a book together. We've read a lot of marriage books together that have been great. But yeah, just doing something together to expand your brain. I love it.
Yeah.
Okay. Number 2 is a conversation starter. So our son has this little deck of questions that he put in a cute little jar, gave me for Mother's Day a couple years ago. And we love to pull a question out at the dinner table and just ask each other. And it could be, what did you want to be growing up? What career did you want to be? Or if you could, we did this the other day. I think we actually made this up. If you could only eat food from one continent or one country for the rest of your life, where would you eat?
Yeah.
That was a fun question.
It was a fun question. We talked about it for a long time.
I said I would go to Mexico and eat their food. Mexican food, 100% through and through. Every day I could eat it again and again, every meal. And you can have breakfast burritos, you can have lunch burritos, you can have dinner nachos. It's so versatile. I don't even understand why you'd want to eat anywhere else.
Yeah.
Mexico.
There you go. Yeah.
What did you say?
I think I said like Mediterranean food.
Yep, you did.
I really enjoy it. I don't know why.
Yeah. So I have a list here, but really you could find a list. Just Google conversation starters, ask ChatGPT to come up some for you. But what's something you've always wanted to try, but you haven't? Or what would a dream vacation look like? It doesn't matter if you can afford it right now. What would it look like? Where would you want to go? Hey, just throw it out there. Maybe you get it on your vision board too. If you could have any job for a year, where would you go work? If you could work anywhere else, where would you go? You get the gist. Or maybe it's more personal. What's one of your favorite memories of us? What is a favorite moment from this past year? What was your favorite thing that we did as a family? Or what do I do that really encourages you as a spouse? You could go in any direction with those, but conversation starters. The other thing that I wanted to throw out here is being well-versed in things that would spark conversations, such as the news. But I have a really great tip for you, because the news for me personally makes my blood pressure rise. So I sometimes just don't watch it because I can't, just don't want that. Or it's really depressing. If you go onto the news website, it's just accident, crash, all these bad things. And it's just so depressing. Or if you watch the TV news, it's just oh my gosh, everyone's just, I just can't handle it. But Ryan, you know this, I did some substitute teaching. It started during the pandemic. There was a need, so I was a substitute teacher. And they had this thing called CNN Student News. It's now been rebranded as CNN 10.
Okay.
It's 10 minutes of news, and there's no drama in it. There's no this guy, that guy. It's just news. So I went today, and I learned that right now Apple is doing so this would be something I could bring up at dinner. Hey, did you know that Apple is actually paying out in a lawsuit because, in fact, Siri was listening and recording conversations? Did you know that?
No, I did not. That's interesting.
Did you know that there's a study out there where they put rats in little carts, and they wanted to see, did they like to run to their Fruit Loops or did they like to drive their cars? And they found that the rats actually like to drive their cars to get the Fruit Loops.
Of course they do. Of course they do.
That is what I learned on CNN 10 today. So there you go. It's 10 minutes long, CNN 10, and you can get the highlights. There's factual things too. There's real world news. There's kind of fun stuff too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I got their trivia question right as well. Today's was, did you know which band has played on all 7 continents?
No.
Metallica.
Wow.
I got it right. And then the announcer had some cheesy song tie-ins. I can't remember. But there you go. So
that's
just
great.
An idea. If you want to stay informed, but you don't want your blood pressure to rise, you could go there and then have dinner and conversation. And because they show it in schools, it could be a good thing, for your kids too.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that is amazing. I want to talk more about these mice that drive their cars to get the Fruit Loops.
I think they were rats. I have to watch it. I think, So we can watch it together. Hey, and look.
That sounds amazing.
Interesting people, right?
Yeah, that is very interesting to me.
Yep.
So
you're welcome.
There you go. Absolutely.
Yep.
That is a perfect example, Michelle. Yeah. I love it. Mm-hmm. Okay. So our third tip here is to set intentional times and places for your conversations. So hey, we're going to talk at 9 p.m. for 15 minutes. This is uninterrupted time. No phones, no TVs, no, it's your primary focus. Don't have something else and then, oh, hey, we're going to have a conversation while I'm watching TV.
Sure. That sounds very interesting.
No, that doesn't work. And I think part of it gets away from that surface level then. And I think the other thing is, Michelle, you had made reference to this. I think of conversation a lot almost like a muscle. You have to build it, right?
Okay,
and it takes intentionality. And if you're looking in the mirror right now and you're saying, man, we only really talk about the day-to-day things. My wife and I don't really ever talk about anything interesting. I think understanding that it's going to take some practice. And that's where I love the intentional time. It's like a workout time, basically. Mm-hmm. Of hey, we're gonna set this time and we're gonna talk about you know what? We're going to talk about rats that drive cars or whatever it is. And understand like, hey, this is going to take some time. It's going to take some time to build, but let's be intentional on it.
Yeah.
Let's set that time, and gradually it will get easier. You will be able to have conversations that are interesting, that are thought-provoking.
It's gonna be, it could even be a little awkward at first, right? And your spouse might be like, what are you doing? Like, why, what are we doing here?
Right.
But I think explaining to them what you're trying to do, hey, I don't want to be complacent. I want our conversations to be interesting. I want to be stimulated with our brains and our conversation, because I think that's really attractive too. When you can connect with your spouse on that, like brain, I don't know, emotional, intelligent, like, EQ? No, IQ.
Intelligence.
Yeah. Just on a conversational level, I think that's really, that's deeper stuff, And then it's like, okay, this is really fun. It's enjoyable to talk with you. I want to do that. And then I think you'll want to do more of that.
Yeah. And I think also it's understanding you might have to get out of your comfort zone. Like, Michelle, I'm just thinking, like, if we're sitting and talking and you're talking about advertising, right? I don't know that much about advertising, but I'm going to be interested in what you're saying. If we're sharing at the end of the day and you're like, oh my goodness, this crazy thing happened today. We're doing this and this. And like, I don't know anything about what you're talking about. Like, I still need to be interested.
Sure. Yeah.
And I think part of that
you do a good job of that too. You're a good listener.
Is vice versa. So like if I'm talking about something about finance and you're like, what is he talking about? Like, still be interested and still ask questions.
Sure.
Don't tune out your spouse if you don't know. Ask a question.
That's a great point, love, because most couples probably are not in the same profession. So, if one of you is a teacher, one of you is like, in the medical field, or one of you is like Ryan in, investments or banking, or someone's in a trade industry or construction. I mean, your spouse probably is not going to get all the technical jargon, but they will get the bigger picture of the story. Like a funny story is still a funny story, and a story is still a story, So, like you had kind of a funny thing happen with a coworker the other day. Yeah. They got like this refund check and they were going to rip it up, and you Googled it and you were like, no, keep that. That's a real check. Keep it. And they were so excited. And that was a fun story that you were able to come home. And we actually went out to dinner last night, used up a gift card that our daughter had given us. And you said, hey, I have this funny story to tell you. And I was like, wait, just save it for dinner. And I had a work story also.
Yeah.
It secured some really big sponsorships and brought on some new members. And so I shared those with you, and you were excited for me. Not because you get the bottom line of our organization or the nitty gritty of all the numbers, but that that's a win and that's a cool thing. And it's something I've been working on, I've been pitching, been cultivating, and now it's come to fruition. So it's a cool thing.
Yeah.
Just at that face value.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it might take, asking a question that you know nothing about, like if your husband's really into sports, like, hey, who do you think's going to win the Super Bowl this year? Mm. Or,
great.
Hey, what do you think of the college football playoff? Like, okay, you might not care at all about it, but your husband probably has an opinion.
Right. Yeah, that's great.
Like, it can bring up a conversation.
And they would probably feel really excited that you asked them that too. Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's this idea of working out and figuring out, okay, I might have to do something different. I might have to do a different quote unquote exercise, but it's going to get me better at this conversation.
Yeah.
It's going to get me better at this skill.
I think a lot of the reoccurring themes from the 3 suggestions we gave you was learning something new. And even with this one, it's you can become interesting by learning something new or being curious about something new.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's kind of the path to these interesting conversations. You're either bringing something to the table or you're asking questions of your spouse where you can pull that out of them.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a great point, Michelle, is we're talking about learning new things, but also asking, asking questions, asking different types of questions as well. I think that's super important,
Yeah. I think my wake up moment for this all of really pulling this out of you is sometimes when we're around your family, and I've told you this before, you kind of, you would like light up and you would kind of, come alive with some of your dialogue with your brothers. And I was like, oh my gosh, Ryan, you know so much about this stuff that I just need to, I want to have conversations like that with you. And I need to up my game with maybe just asking you because, for a while, it was like either you didn't think I knew enough about that or, world events or whatever, or you just, I don't know, maybe I wasn't like a good responder or something, but I did, after we had that conversation a couple of years ago, I feel like you've opened up more with me, and you try really hard to have conversations, about world events or whatever it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you remember that conversation?
Yeah,
where I was like,
yeah.
I see this side of you in this group. So how can I access that too?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I remember that. I think it's also looking at, I probably struggle more with like starting conversation. So I think part of it's also maybe understanding some of that. And this kind of goes back to questions. Like if you have a spouse that's maybe a little bit more reserved or something like that, this is where I think the question becomes super important.
Sure.
Because if you were, it's like, hey, how was your day?
Good.
Like,
yeah.
I don't necessarily like, I might be one to not elaborate, but if it's something, like, hey, what's something interesting that happened to you today?
Right.
Or, something like where you're avoiding those one word answers.
Right. We've done high, low, high before. Tell me a high of your day, a low of your day, a high of your day. Or with our kids, with Thomas, I'll do like, hey, tell me 5 cool things about your day. Things like that. But I like the high, low, high. That really pulls out a lot of interesting content too. So
yeah. I really do believe like if you want to become more interesting, a key component of that is asking interesting questions. When you're in a conversation with your spouse, what type of questions are you asking? Because it really does. It'll make you more interesting. Your spouse will respond. They will be more interesting to you. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you want to be interesting, ask interesting questions.
Oh, yeah. That's a good one.
That's good, Ryan.
Yeah, there you
said
go.
it. You said it, not me.
Well.
Should we recap our points for them?
All right. Yeah, okay. Let's do it. Okay. So number 1 was expand your brains.
Expand.
Take a class together. Do something together that will make you think. Read a book. Do a devotional. Michelle had mentioned our prayer series right now has been really great for us as well. Of just doing something that engages your brain to stimulate conversation.
Number 2, get a list of conversation starters. You can find a list online. Just Google conversation starters. We have a few cards at our house, deck of cards at our house that have questions on them, but you can find them anywhere. I also recommended watching CNN 10, which is the student version of the news that will not raise your blood pressure, but it will give you informed world events. And that has been a really fun thing for us also.
Yeah. Number 3 is to set an intentional time and place for your conversation. Consider this like your conversation workout time. And have that be, no distractions, no phones, no TVs, just you and your spouse looking into each other's eyes, gazing, having conversation.
I'll gaze into your eyes right now.
All right.
Number 4 is to ask better questions. If you want to be an interesting person, you need to ask interesting questions. So ask questions that are not yes or no. Something like, what was the most interesting part of your day? Did anything funny happen today? What are you most proud of about your day at work today? Tell me.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, Michelle, I was just thinking of some bonus content. Number 5.
All right. Drum roll.
Drum roll. You could get your very own mystery jar.
That's perfect.
Yes.
That's a great segue.
Right.
Who's going to write the questions? They could watch each of our shows and answer along with us.
Yeah, that's true.
Should we do it? Is it time?
It is time.
Mystery question time.
Yep.
You can read it, love.
I'm going to read it?
Yes, you do it.
Ooh, it's a long one. All right. When it comes to conflict in our marriage, we both tend to retreat and avoid. We both avoid conflict. How can we work to overcome this?
We did a devotional in our life group the other week about types of conflict, and it referred to like different types of dogs, right? Like a bulldog, a wiener dog. Like, do you just roll over, play dead? And I think that was the type that's referred to. Like, they just retreat.
Right.
They just like want to avoid it. I wonder in that situation, I wonder if you feel safe to have a conversation. Where did that retreating come from? Was there something that maybe like caused pain in the past where you feel like you can't have a safe conversation? I wonder what's stemming it. And I think it would just be trying to be intentional and asking your spouse, like, hey, I know that we both like to just shove the conflict down and just shove it and bury it. But for the health of our marriage, we really need to talk about it. And maybe it's just in a safe setting. Maybe you go to your kitchen table and you each, share a couple things and just pray beforehand and vow to, not let it get heated, but just to know that you're on the same team and see if you can come up with a resolution. Yeah.
That's good, Michelle. This coming from also a conflict avoider, which I believe I fully am. Yeah. But here's the truth. I don't think you ever avoid conflict. I think that's the very nature of conflict is you can't avoid it. I think if you push it down, it just continues to grow.
Ooh,
and it will continue to come back and come back and come back because you never dealt with it. And so it really is, as much as you want to not deal with it, you have to.
Or else you're just putting it off till a later date.
You're not dealing with it. Mm-hmm. It just will continue to come up time and time again because it was never dealt with. And this coming from somebody that I don't particularly enjoy conflict, but I know that it's difficult, but it needs to be dealt with. So Michelle, you said it. I think find a time and place that's safe, that you're both clear-headed and can approach it, but don't put it off. Even if it's like, hey, can we talk about this tomorrow? Mm-hmm. Be intentional on setting it. Even if you need some time,
That's good.
Mm-hmm. I very much am a processor, so I like to think through it, but I think it's coming and saying, hey, I need some time to think about this. Can we come back tonight, and talk about this?
Yeah, that's great.
But it has to be dealt with, because otherwise it keeps coming back.
I think we also have shows with Verena Schnur-Alex and Tony Bohr, and they both talk about communication. If you look in our show list under communication, they'll be in the title of the show. Both of them have excellent episodes where we've interviewed them, and they had great things to say. And I think they both referenced those styles too, or something to that effect, how to deal with conflict. So thank you for the question.
Yeah.
I need to show our listeners and viewers something.
Oh, it's empty.
It's an empty mystery question jar. So you want to send one in, yours could be next.
Yep.
That number is 605-951-0110. Thank you for submitting those. And thank you, listener, for investing in your marriage. We love getting to talk to you, and we would love to hear your feedback. So let us know. Send us an email or a message. Let us know on Instagram, Celebrate MarriageCast, and we just want to walk with you. We also have resources at Celebrate.church/marriage. And like we shared, we have the 21 days of prayer going on right now too that you can find at Celebrate.church. Ryan, any final parting thoughts for our listeners today?
No, I'm just excited for you all to become the most interesting people in the world.
I'm going to sit up a little taller just with that.
Yeah.
The most interesting man and woman in the world.
Yeah.
In the podcast room at least. But for sure.
For sure
in the podcast room.
In the podcast room.
Working on the world.
Yeah.
All right. We hope you guys have a great week, and we will see you on 5 Minute Friday.
Have a great week.